we need, not just on Iran, but across the board, we need a change of mind and a change of attitude in the liberal West. Now, there are all kinds of reasons for what is happening today. I'm not going to bore you by going through the problems that we. I'm not assuming most people here are liberal-minded. Might be some Tories here. It's fine, you're welcome, all welcome here. But going through them, I just want you need to look at things, but trying to understand why it is as if I was to hold up an article defending the Iranian regime, or in Britain's case, turning its back on liberal-minded people in Britain, liberal-minded Muslims in Britain, but defending the Muslim Brotherhood or the extreme right, and ask you to guess what type of paper it was in. And you would say, well, Nick, that's going to be a left-wing paper rather than the right-wing paper. That's going to be the New Statesman rather than the Spectator. There are many reasons why the left is so odd. I mean, go through a few of them: the death of socialism, and with it, the death of ideas of camaraderie, fear of violence, fear of isthmus attack. But the one I think it's worth mentioning in the Iranian context, which will hurt the Iranian opposition most, is our kind of postmodern, highly relativized version of liberalism, which, while saying that, while affirming human rights, anti-racism, anti-sexism, defense of homosexuals in our society, turns its back on those same people in other societies, saying, well, it's their culture. That's their culture, and we have no right to criticise, we have no right to intervene. Now, this is a very, first of all, it's a very lazy doctrine, because it stops you showing solidarity, and it's becoming, in my view, almost a racist doctrine. That, for example, the emancipation of women is all very well for white-skinned women in London, but not for brown-skinned women in Tehran. Or, if you want to get a bit more local, it's all very well for white-skinned women in Hampstead and Highgate, but not for brown-skinned women in Bethnal Green and Bow. And that, I think, is the biggest problem that the Iranian opposition faces. And it was summed up for me by a wonderful Iranian called Afsar Nafizi. I probably pronounced it wrong. I got it right. So there you go. Well, that's a world first. Who wrote a marvellous book, which I highly commend to you, called Reading Lolita in Tehran. I don't know how many people here have read it. Afsar was a very brilliant lecturer at Tehran University, and she faced ever more steady persecutions. And she said that living under the mullahs was like having to live with a man who has raped you. And she and her friends found solace in meeting at her house once a week and going through one of the classics, everything from Pride and Prejudice to Lolita, and finding solace in between the lines and seeing how literature related to their own lives, even in the most disconnected way. Now, she eventually got out of Iran and found asylum in America. And she thought, this is fantastic. Here I am, I think she went to Harvard, here I am in liberal Massachusetts. There'll be all kinds of people, not George Bush and the American right, who are frankly hopeless at this anyway, but all good liberal people who will be supporting me, putting pressure on the Iranian government, making the persecution of my, to use a very old-fashioned word, comrades, a global issue. And instead, she was met with blank incomprehension, and no, we don't want to talk about that. We don't talk about it at all. And finally, she confronted a sort of leading student, politician, maybe a teacher, and said that, well, you go on, the smallest sexist remark, the smallest racist remark, you drop your cup of coffee and run around screaming in this university. Why can't you oppose the same thing, or on an institutionalised scale, with the full force of the state behind it in Iran? And the man looked a little bit shocked and being brought up on the postmodernists and on multicultural, said, but that's your culture. And Afsar, because she was in Massachusetts, the home of Salem, the home of, where Arthur Miller went to research the Crucible, said, well, burning witches used to be the culture here. Cultures change, but they change for the better when the brave people fighting them know they have the support of the outside world in doing it. They get resources, they get encouragement. Their oppressors know that what they do, if news gets out, is going to be paraded, and that to me, that strikes me as something that, to go from high politics to a Soho theatre is something all of us could resolve to do a little bit more about.
Thank you very much, Nick.